Welcome to the Fly Culture Podcast, bringing you interviews, reviews and fishing tips. Here's your host, Pete Tigus.
Welcome back, everyone, to the very latest episode of the Fly Culture Podcast. I hope you're all well and I hope you're all keeping safe. I'm not able to fish at the moment, and so what I've been doing really is thinking about the fishing that I have locally, but in my mind I'm sort of planning where would I like to go. And if you've read the latest copy of Fly Culture magazine, you'd have seen the beautiful piece that Susan Scruper wrote in there about a trip she made to fish in Italy. And it was in the Italian Alps and the Dolomites. I've never fished there, but the thought of feisty brook trout from mountainside streams has really lit a fire. So thank you so much for that, Susan. And doing some research, I found there are also marble trout, brown trout, pike from mountain lakes, asp, largemouth bass, and then also saltwater fishing to throw into the mix as well. I really wanted to learn a lot more, so I thought it would be best to contact the protagonist of Susan's piece, fishing guide Vito Rubino. I sort of met Vito a little while back in London at a Fly Culture launch party, and it was great to catch up with him there. And we've also kept in touch a little bit as well. But Vito, thank you so much for taking the time to chat to me today. How are you doing?
Well, thanks a lot for having me. Hi, everyone. Well, we're doing okay. I mean, we've seen surely better days, all of us, but we're doing okay. Bit of fishing now, with all these restrictions, we are keeping safe. So not always we can go according to the country, to the region, to the place, to the color and to the tier. We are, but we are doing okay. I mean, keeping safe, trying to do what we love and to get ready for when it will be safe and we can all meet again, travel again and hug and meet friends and fish doing what we love, and won't be long.
Cool. That sounds cool. Like I've written elsewhere, hugging fishing friends is something I really have missed a great deal too. But yeah. I think I met you at a launch party in London, and you'll be familiar to many people listening to this because obviously you were based in London at the Orvis store for a number of years as well. So I guess a lot of people will know you pretty well, won't they?
Well, sorry. I met a lot of anglers and, people in London. I've been working, I worked for, Orvis. I was the fishing manager in London for several years. And now I come and go, even if, during these times, you can imagine that I stay a bit more in Italy just to prepare next season and all the rest. But yeah, I mean, I lived in UK and still have a lot of fellow anglers over there. And I love it. I mean, I also enjoyed the fishing so much in the south, in Derbyshire, with some good friends like John Pearson, the Pressbrook and Lytton. Then back in the south on the shoal stream, I was lucky enough to fish quite a few shoal stream. One of the good things of being in the fishing industry is to get to know a lot of people, and I'm not a shy person. I mean, you might say that. So I really like to socialize and, to fish together, talk about our passion. And also, I mean, share experiences because this is what it's all about. I've never been someone that, just say, I love my way of fishing. Fishing is, as I say, and that's it. Because fishing has so many faces and all the faces can bring, something to the other one, if you know what I mean. So I did also a lot of saltwater for bass, which was amazing. I always say for sea bass because, when I am outside the UK, bass can mean a lot of things like largemouth. So I did quite a lot of that as well. I mean, on the saltwater, I love it. I mean, I struggle to say just one thing that I love because fishing is so beautiful. It's got a lot of, way to have fun and way to enjoy and also way to improve at being technical actually. So however you want to see it, in a very technical way or, just to enjoy the surrounding. There are the high mountains, there is the lush countryside, there is the sea. How can you choose?
How can That's you a choose? Yeah, that's a nice little mix to have, isn't it? You've just got I reread Susan's piece this morning, and like I said in the introduction, the mountain streams for brook trouts, but then you've got the valley, slower flowing, wider rivers there. And we're going to come on to a little bit more about the fishing that you have there. But how did fishing first come to you? Where were you sort of introduced to it? Was it in Italy, I guess?
Yeah, it was in a very rural village because my mother and so my grandparents, they come from Abruzzo, which is a rural village in central southern Italy, where the farm is still the farming culture is still very much alive with the cattle and taking the milk from the cow and these kind of things. So I was lucky enough to have in that village quite a lot of waters around, small streams and a lake. So I remember the first time I went fishing was when I was 6 years old. And my mother, I still remember, she wouldn't bet a dime about me fishing because, in the stereotype, you have to be patient to be a fisherman. And I was always been, and I'm still am, so hyperactive. And so she thought, no way he's going to like fishing. But, strange things about life is that I loved it. Maybe because, was when I did it for the first time, I was with my brother and a bit of family. So everything is perfect over there, right? So I used to love it. I started in that area with, I guess I can call it kind of match fishing and feeder in the lake and these kind of things. Even if, at the beginning you discover, you explore, right? So also in terms of equipment, at that time it wasn't an issue to buy the rod. I mean, I used to get in old garage whatever I could find, and still remember I used to collect the bloodworm in the manure of my uncle because my uncle had cows. So digging into the manure to find the best, I guess very tasty bloodworm for the fish, like for them on their perspective. So that's the first time I started fishing, and I can really say that I never stopped. It was something that has been with me as now I can say a profession somehow. Well, without somehow, but also as a hobby or however you say it, has always been with me, giving me pleasure and sometimes saving my life, if you know what I mean. Like, life can be tough. So in fishing, all the priorities come back to the right place. It's like a reshuffling of things while you do what you love. So that's how it started. Of course, here fly fishing wasn't a huge thing in terms of English fly fishing, so the one that we know with the reel, the fly line, and so on, like the modern fly fishing. But I encountered a lot also the traditional fly fishing way, because in Italy we have, our traditional method of fly fishing, which is quite similar to tenkara, which is a bit more renowned in the world nowadays, with horsehair line, which you start to furl, and very simple flies, which they can resemble the North Country spiders, patterns, let's say. And we have it in northern Italy and in central Italy. We have these kind of methods. But, I encountered modern fly fishing, let's say when I was teenager, and that was a blast, to be honest. That was like a drug. Like, when you start and then you discover a bit more and then you start to understand how it works, because, I still remember facing the very fast water, because in Italy, in a lot of places, we have quite a gradient, let's say. So we fish in freestone, quite sometimes small stream and very fast water. So you just start to, to learn how to cope with that, especially with fly fishing method, where mending is an issue, presentation is an issue. So at the very beginning, I still remember, my fly line in the water, and as soon as he touched it, like 2 miles downstream, you're like, what? How can you fish these places, Or you had an eddy at the other side, that eddy at the other side. on the other bank, and you say, how the hell am I going to make my fly stay for more than a fraction of a second over there, So all these kind of things. Then slowly, let's say I started, and I'm still continuing to understand something, let's say. And let's say that, as I said at the beginning, I love fly fishing in all its variation, let's say, from the pure dry or die to the, throw that meat with streamer fishing. And because, when you see a fish rising on your dry fly, which is an imitation of the real insect they are feeding on, is such a joy. On the other side, when you are stripping a streamer and you strip set and your line goes out from your hand, it's nice as well. I mean, I'm getting excited. We need to go fishing very soon. I'm getting too excited. So I love it. I love it all. And maybe nowadays I really do it all, from, the traditional method of fly fishing, or, the development of this traditional method, the translation with modern material, let's say. So very up high in the mountain, very minimal, with just a backpack, bunch of flies and rod line, and that's it. And maybe I keep the purest side of it to that, in the middle of nowhere, or, up in the Alps and Dolomites, but also in the Apennines, which are a bit different in terms of scenario and also in terms of approach, let's say. And then I enjoy fly fishing in all its variation down in the valley, from Euro-nymphing to dry fly to streamer fishing, as I said, and also on the seaside for bass. I have to admit that, bass gave me a huge click. Predator fishing is great on the fly, I find, for my taste. But, I'm so open that I don't really stick necessary to dry fly, to predator fly fishing. Sometimes I feel that fly fishing is a bit, you do it because you want to do it in some, when it comes to predators. For example, I find myself fishing on huge lake, winter season, where you have to go deep down. So sometimes instead of, pushing it and fish with a DI7 going, 6 meters down, I really love lure fishing as well. Also, when I do inspection of new waters, so you have to dig more water and to understand a bit more some dynamics. Coming to predator, I also love, lure fishing. So I'm not someone that say, that's lure fishing, that's cheating. It's never cheating, because if you don't know, a lot of time, I'm never on a judging position, because for me, fishing is really something that goes together with the seeking of happiness, if you know what I mean. So how can you say someone, you're not doing it right? When you respect the law and the nature, however, whatever that can please you is great. I really make a big distinction. For me, there is a fork between, spreading a method, or, being on the guiding side, and on the personal side. Of course, on the guiding side, and on when it comes to spread, especially nowadays with social, where your word is not just heard in a pub between a small group, but whatever you say goes to millions of people. So this, together with that, comes a responsibility in presenting a method, how it should be presented, how they, from the past, they gave it to us, and so we have to preserve it and give it to someone else in the future. So that's one side. And the other side is, whatever that can please you and make you have a great day on the water. Of course, always respecting the law and the nature.
Wise words. I like that. And we're all on the same team, aren't we? And it doesn't matter if whatever suits one person may not suit the other. But as long as they're having a good time out of it, it doesn't really matter, does it? And I think that through this lockdown, that I think is starting to happen a little bit more. So I hope those factions, if they existed, are broken down and merged a little bit more, and we all enjoy it for what it is when we're we're able to get out. But I wanted to
Absolutely.
come back to what you were saying about the mountain traditional fishing, because I know we were talking off Mike about the Patagonia film, and that showed that simplistic form of fishing. And fishing, as you know, particularly in the UK, is a small little world, and I obviously knew and recognised your name long before we met. But also the Tenkara aspect of it. And I know you were running courses when Tenkara was starting to grow in the UK a little bit more. For you, was that sort of a natural hark back to those methods? Did it sort of resonate with you that it was a method that you were aware of from having fished the mountain streams in Italy?
So, yeah, I mean, that's a great question. Let's say that at the beginning of Tenkara, when we started to spread a bit, and I started to spread it a bit, I was, as you can imagine, under the bombing, under the bombs, like this is not fly fishing, this is pole, especially because in the US culture, there isn't a huge tradition in fixed line fishing. So whatever is with fixed line is the same, right? The way I saw it, because I knew Valsesiana, so that traditional Italian method, and I did it a couple of times, not in the right way, of course. I mean, just because I wasn't really aware of the Valsesiana itself with the Valsesiana master. As you mentioned, Arturo Pugno, Andrea Scalvini, they are great master. They are featured in the Patagonia movie. But let's say, yes, so for me was a translation into modern times and modern material of that traditional method. So let's say that for me was to bring the Valsesiana pleasure to everyone, because not everyone can travel with a 4 meter, with a 13-foot long in one piece bamboo rod on the car just to go fishing, right? So I mean, time change, and also horsehair line. No one can or might be able at the first shot to fur a horsehair line, for example, right? So that Tenkara to me was perfect. And I mean, for me, it's not a huge mystery that it came from Japan, because Japan is great in combining the old tradition, sometimes in the extreme way, to the extreme modernity. I mean, if I think about, I don't know, a geisha dressed in traditional suit under a Tokyo skyscraper, to me it makes sense. And that's what it is, the extreme tradition that means the extreme sometimes modernity in terms of, lightness of the material, so lightness of the design. So that was absolutely perfect. So that was my first encounter. I met Daniel Gallardo, which was, well, the first one to spread it in the Western world. And we also shared quite a few days here in Italy because he came down. We've been together in Rome and in Central Italy on the Apennines, fishing a bit, doing some event. And I wouldn't say that has been a mission because, I still understand what are the very important things in life, so mission and that Jesus Christ syndrome is something else, but I've always been happy to spread what I love, let's say. So I started to do quite a few events and courses after a while, after at least a couple of years that I was fishing very hard to that. So, and for, I would say, 4 years, I fished Tenkara so hardly and so badly, even when Tenkara was not the right method to use in that water. But I did it for training, because I felt that there was a huge training to be done. In our culture, easy and simplicity and, simple and easy, sometimes they get mistaken. Simple doesn't mean easy, sometimes means completely another thing. It's like the art. In the Oriental art, in our Western world, we find an equilibrium point and then we start to add and add until we reach a result. maybe in the Oriental one, like the Zen approach, you find the balance and then you take off to find the essence, let's say. And I feel that this path is is a very long path. It's a very long path. So yeah, you can see it. You can see it with simple eyes. That's the way you have to see it. But that doesn't mean it's easy. In terms of marketing, I mean that has been also a marketing point, right? It's easy. It's easy because it's easy buy it, and it's okay with that. But I think that was the most difficult part in spreading Tenkara to me, to make people, let's say, to travel in this long journey step by step together, at least for a part of this path with a lot of people, let's say. And this is not easy to spread, this word, because it's not easy to understand on the same side, let's say. So it's not easy to explain, and it's not easy to understand it.
Yeah, it's an interesting one to think about a little bit, because while you were talking, I was thinking about it's seen as a Japanese pastime, yet we talked about what was going on in Italy, and it is the real simplicity of, you could imagine hundreds of years, people cutting a branch off a tree, plaiting up a horsehair and some sort of artificial fly. And I remember, it must be 30 years ago, probably longer than that, I remember reading something about how they were fishing the streams in France in a similar method. And I think, please excuse if I've got this wrong, it was called Autoc, AUTOC, I think it was called. I'm probably completely wrong, but it always stuck in my mind that even then people must have been finding a way to cover water. And I guess, again, it shows how universal fishing is, and how anglers, be they casual, be they catching for their dinner, have found a way to adapt. And I guess that brings us round to modern times, that it's easier to find those things now, isn't it? It's easier to pass information. I remember Daniel's videos when he first started putting those out for the Tenkara rods, and I bought one immediately. I remember him fishing an elk hair caddis on a bouldery stream, and and I bought one of those, and I've not used them as much as I possibly could. I live where it's probably possible. And do you think part of it is that anglers as a whole, we're a traditional bunch and we like what we like, and that's it? And the reason I ask that is, I think we had a conversation in one of the podcasts I did about rod handles, and how cork, it's difficult to get people to look beyond a cork handle. Do you think that is because perhaps we are, generally speaking, a traditional bunch, and it takes us time to accept different aspects into fishing?
Yes, I mean, I think it's a matter of comfort zone, because I learn something and then I don't want to think about other stuff. I focus on my thing, which it's like when you know a fishing spot. You always go at first when you caught the fish last time, because you know that you caught a fish, so you are confident in that, and it's like the fish are just in that beat, right? So to go outside the comfort zone takes time, and nowadays, also on the psychological side, that's the latest thing we do, to go out this comfort zone and our beliefs. Let's say we have few beliefs, we stick to them, and that's it. I found myself explaining a lot of time with, proper topics and, explaining step by step, but it was like talking with a wall, it was like coming back always to the first issue, even if you explained everything. So it's like, oh, well, but this is like your nymphing. No, it's not, because A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Yeah, but it's like your nymphing. Okay, it's like your nymphing. I mean, whatever, whatever. And it's not only about Tenkara, it's about any fishing method, actually. It's about any fishing method. Sometimes I use the example of trolling with a boat. People think that, trolling is just, you choke a lure and you troll. But at what boat speed size, at what depth, how long has to be the line to reach that depth, and how fast you have to go to reach. You see, when you are not into a fishing method, I'm not really into the trolling method, but this is just an example, you know. When you are not into a fishing method, it's easy to say it's easy, you know. Then when you take a road, you start to understand that it wasn't that easy, or it wasn't as you thought, let's say. It was like tenkara and casting is the perfect example. Now, because you don't have the reel, casting is not involved for the people, but you know, the reel and fly fishing doesn't, you know, the reel is not about casting, right? So it's about acceleration, it's about line speed and all these kind of things. In tenkara is pretty much the same, but since it doesn't have a reel, people think that casting and casting method, casting technique is not involved. It's, you know, it's the way it is. It's the way it is. We are all human beings. In fishing, I love this holistic approach, but maybe I'm the same with some other things, right? So we all have our faults, and you know, life is tough. I always say life is tough, and we need to be kind with all ourselves. Life is tough, so you know, judging someone just because stick to his or her beliefs, you know, it's maybe they got other struggles.
I think the best answer to that is it's all good, isn't it? No matter what you do, and just enjoy every aspect of it. For me, this is probably, and I wrote something the other day about it, that I think this is the longest spell I've gone without fishing, and I'm kind of okay with it at the moment. I do miss it dreadfully. I miss not catching up with friends and the aspects of that fishing. So what I'd love you to do, Vito, is take me to one of those mountain streams, describe them for me, how wide they are, the pocket water, what's in there, how you're fishing, and perhaps we might work down the river to the sea.
Yeah.
And then what's down there, you can see where I'm navigating to, the sort of fishing, having read Susan's piece, that to me, up in the mountains, fishing for those brook trout and everything else. But could you set the picture for me and take me away to a river for a short time?
Of course, with pleasure, because you make me dream as well. So first of all, let's stop for a coffee. That's the first step we have to do. We stop for a coffee, discuss the approach and what we are going to find, sort out all the fishing permits, because here in Italy there is a national fishing license, because we cannot own the water in general in Italy. So water is public, but you need a national license, pretty much like in the US scheme, for example, and in other places. But on top of that, you might have some bits which are managed by trust. Those are no-profit trusts, which they use all the budget taken by issuing tickets to manage the rivers, actually. So reinforce the water stock, or you know, the bank, and do works and all these kind of things, and also managing 360. So after our coffee, we move up high in the mountain. So because the first day I want to spoil it as soon as we arrive with the best location. We go on a very high altitude mountain valley. So what you will find will be like a huge meadows everywhere, with some wild horses over there. And so you can see all the crests around. And those are the crests that bring water. Because not only in terms of spring, but also in terms of glacier, and you know, snow melting and rain as well. They collect all the waters. Since they collect all the waters, we can agree we find at least two kinds of stream. The narrow, small size stream coming down to the main stream flowing down to the valley. So here we have the two different kind of approach and stream. The very small stream, where there are two big challenges in approaching a very small size stream. The first one is to be very stealth, because you know, those are wild fish. Probably we will find native brown trout up in the mountain, some wild brook trout, which are not native. The brook trout, the native of Italy is the char, the Salvelinus alpinus, which generally is in deep down in alpine lakes, unless you got some water coming in or out close to the spawning season, so you might find them a bit toward the streams and on top. But you will find mostly brook trout and wonderful brown trout with livery different according to the shelter, because they can change so quickly from deep black, and when I say deep black, I do mean like a deep black where you struggle to see any spot, up to the crystal silver, let's say. So the first challenge is to be very stealth, because they are wild, so whatever comes from up, from prey of birds, birds of prey and other things. And the second big challenge is actually to hit the water with the cast, because they are so narrow, and you think, I mean, how a fish this size, I'm talking about 25-30 centimeters, which is something like that, but very oxygenated, so very powerful, how we can live in this small water, let's say. And at the beginning of the season, but not only, you can find also some mamas, because some bigger fish, because to spawn they go up on the side stream, and sometimes they are there, so you find also 40-50 centimeters, so I'm talking about trophy trout actually, living in few inches of water. Is amazing. So a struggle is to hit the water, because they are very narrow. So this is the first thing we might encounter. Then on the big stream, the one collecting all the waters, it's, well, for a fly angler, I mean, I dare to say it's the pure heaven. It's the pure heaven, because you got it all. You got the riffle, then you got the slow part resembling, an homogeneous current a bit deeper, where the river flows like a chalk stream, let's say, in terms of current, very homogeneous. So let's say dry fly, or we also have a method which is, I can call it, with attractor patterns, because we call pesca in caccia, which means hunting fishing, which is on the dry fly, but not on the rice. Because anyway, on the mountain stream, the season is quite short. So when you got that sprout and season blossom with all of insect, they have to feed. So they don't miss the chance to feed when they have the occasion. So we fish with those dry fly, because they are looking up, even if you don't see any trout. So it's rarely sight fishing. Coming back to the issue where, we were mentioning the different spots and different kind of method of fishing, I feel that the UK chalk stream gave me a lot, because being used to that kind of streams, I very rarely fish sight fishing. With the UK chalk stream, I got a bit more used to the sight fishing, to look at the fish, not on the rice, but inside the water. So if before I was fishing, let's say 90% hunting and 10% sight, now my catch return, let's say, changed a bit after the chalk stream. So you see how something can give you, as a fishing trip, it's not just about experience, but you can get something back to your home water actually. So you got this riffle, so this big part of the river where you can fish, like in the, let's call it the traditional, the classic English dry fly fishing. Then fast current with the eddies and deep pools just up behind the rock, and this is great as well. And over there are several methods you can use. You can switch from still hunting, but with a lot of mending. You might have heard of the Italian casting style, which was the adaptation of the chalk stream English method to the fast water, actually, because that fly line method is adapted from the homogeneous chalk stream to the mountain stream. That's another issue, talking about tenkara and all the other things. So with fly first presentation, so with very close stops, they use this example, which I think is great, which is like hammering a nail to hang a painting. So to do that fly first presentation and avoid all the drag. But, Euro nymphing, or the new method, we call it pesca a filo, which means like fishing with a string, because you have these long leaders like in Euro nymphing, but you don't have to stick necessarily on nymph like in Euro nymphing, because, with the same method you can fish streamer, for example. And because with streamer, sometimes you got huge fish laying under the rock, but you cannot cast distance and then do all the strip, because you will get a lot of drag and your swimmer might be washed out. So you have to be in control. So it will be like a triangle created like in the Euro nymphing method, just to fish that small part with a streamer, let's say swinging it. It's a precision fishing sometimes, you don't have a lot of chances to make a mistake, because if you don't hit the right place with the right current or managing rightly your line, or if you don't manage to do a proper cast, so you splash your line in the water, you got an empty pool. The good thing is that you are forgiven quite soon, because after, let's say, half an hour maximum, all the fish are back in position and, ready to bite again. So we'll do that. Generally, we fish it upstream as well, but there are some occasions when you can fish by all means downstream, talking about that stimulator issue. So, the skating sedge is something that, when you see a fish jumping out of the water to take it, to get, these big caddies, or even stimulator, because you got this big, sometimes stonefly or big sedge, is amazing, is something. You don't have a lot of rise up in the mountain, because the hatch are very much less, let's say. That's why we fish more on top, but in hunting, you do get the rise, especially on this slow pace, because you got hatches, but let's say this is more a valley fishing, more down in the valley where, it's more, let's say, countryside surrounding. So slower water, the gradient start to mild a bit, the water is lower, and you got the usual circle of life, so with the evening rise and all that jazz. So now we are in the valley, I guess, with bigger water, wider water, a bit deeper water, and we have to wear waders, because what I encourage up high in the mountain is wet wading. Wet wading is it's an approach which is not really known and is a bit misunderstood sometimes, because the approach people ask me in wet wading, like, okay, but how can you do you get wet? And the answer is yes, it's called wet wading. So you do get wet and you have to get wet. But this sometimes is not quite natural to think about getting wet, let's say, because it's more about the time you spend inside the water. Because as we said, on mountain stream, we don't have this wide river. So yeah, we have to step into the river, we have to wade, but then you get dry quite quickly. And since we have to keep a stealthy approach, we prefer to fish from the bank in a stealth way. So we don't spend time like on a valley river, like, even 1 hour inside the water. You get wet and then you get dry again. So the important thing is to have the right shoes, the right boots, the right material to get dry again. And so that allows you also to walk, because up high in the mountain, you got more chances to walk along the bank, to explore more water, let's say, while when you go a bit down, so you reach the valley, waders, you can do it wet wading. I mean, there is, I don't know how to say it in a polite way, but there is a point where you reach, there is that men's issue at least, but also women. I mean, that's a sensitive part of the body, which make you always say, brr, like, woo. So, but if you have to spend more time in the water, in deeper pools, like in the valley, because in the valley, slower gradient, more amount of water, because in the meantime, the river collected all the water from the mountain with more side stream. you make it to the valley, so a bit wider sometimes. If not wider, it's deeper, because it's this rule, right? So and you got a fishing which is still a mountain fish in terms of approach, let's say, but with, let's say, slower water, deeper pools, and more food for sure, because they got way more chances to feed all year round, let's say. And therefore, you got on average bigger trout, that for sure. And you start to encounter in northern Italy, all over the Alpine Arch, the marble trout, which was the ancestral native trout all over the Alpine Arch. Then, back in the century, there has been the Austrian emperor. The Austrian emperor, at least on that side, like Trentino, you see Austria, Italy, those are border places, right? So, along the history, they mixed a lot. There was an introduction of the brown trout, but of the German strain, so of the northern strain, but it was for feeding people, actually. So, I don't see here. It wasn't just to have fun and to catch some trout. That was about feeding population. And the German strain was quite resistant also to flood and these, changes. So it got a lot of grounds on the marble. That's why now marble there are still plenty, especially in some bit, let's say, all over the Alpine Arch, from the part close to France on the western side up to the eastern side, and then Slovenia, all over the Alpine Arch. Of course, now there are, I would say in comparison, more brown trout than marble trout, that for sure. That's why there are a lot of projects of, protecting the wild stock of marble. And the hatchery, we did a couple of visits with Susan as well, with some friend of mine managing the hatchery. When I mention hatchery, I always have to specify that those are kind of institutional hatchery. So it's not the hatchery that you will use it's not a farm, a fish farm for restaurant, for example, for the rainbow trout or stuff like that. When I mention this hatchery, it's about the protection of the wild stock, where with electrofishing, you get the right studs and mare around, that small stream, because they go there to spawn. And, sorry, that's not the right technical word, but squeeze the eggs, get the eggs, and then, just to help the reintroduction of the wild stock, let's say. That's why it's very protected. In the Apennines, you will find always mountain, but lower crest. You can still find this huge meadow. Generally, it's not about the cattle like cows, but it's more about sheep and lambs, these kind of things. So here the first difference also in culture, because in the north you don't have olive oil, because the northern spot where the Romans used to grow olives for olive oil was the Garda Lake, because it has got a special kind of environment, which is like being in central Italy. But olive oil is not a northern thing, butter is. So that's why you got cow. In central Italy, you got sheep and these other kind of meadows. So you see, all go together. I mean, the food is not something just aside. It's all connected. All the culture is connected. It's just one big thing. The main difference is also, since we have lower crest and higher temperature, is way more bushy, overgrown. So you fish not in those alpine meadows where it's everything open. So casting in terms of line distance, back cast, is not a problem, let's say. But you have those big meadows, and then the river in a lot of spots is overgrown. So you got shorter rod. The Italian casting style, since we mentioned, is based on that. Short rod, generally 7.5, and over with underrated line, like, if I got a 4, I fish with a 3, because it's all about speed and it's all about managing the line, let's say. So you will fish more in this area. We don't have in the central part of Italy all over the Apennines Arch, which are the backbone of Italy, running from the deep north almost to the deep south in the central part of Italy. We don't have the marble trout, that's an alpine and dolomite arch fish, but we do have our strain, which is different each valley, you know, these subfamilies of brown trout, which is the real native. And it's amazing because, you know, the brown trout of one river is very special to that river. If you go to another river, you don't find it. So it's after generation and generation since the mist of time. You will find some German strain, like we call it Atlantic strain. You will still find it because it's spread all over the place. You can also find some stream-bred rainbow, because back in the days, pretty much like, you know, what they say about the Derbyshire Wye, where there was a flood and from a pond, the rainbow came into the river, pretty much the same. So you can find those, well, sometimes they resemble steelheads. They are huge and powerful. So also in terms of fish, there isn't a fish. I'm not racist coming to fish. I'm not racist at all, but I come into fish, not at all again. The brown trout is amazing, and then there are the old big trophy brown trout, which we call the grandmas, because like the grandma, you know, in central southern Italy, it's all about the grandma. You have the stereotype of the Italian macho, but it's the women that has got the power. In central Italy, I mean, keeping the house, I'm talking about the good old days, managing everything. Also the family budget in terms of the food and all you have. So I still remember my grandfather with my grandmother, you know, like blah, 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 but then if she got angry. So the grandma trout is the one giving all the gene, the pure gene, and taking along generation. It's a different approach, of course, because since it's overgrown, it's different in terms, as I said, you know, in terms of managing the line. You cannot do this long backcast and, you know, fast water. We do have rice down in the valley, but it's different. Lower altitude, that's a long way.
That's a long way, and there's been so much. I've got about 1,000 questions for you, but I'm going to pare them right back. And, you know, it was fascinating what you said about skating the flies. And when you were talking about that water, I was thinking stimulator. And then you said it. And do you sometimes hang a nymph off that stimulator as well? Or is the water too quick? Or will you try that sometimes just to...
No, absolutely so. Absolutely so, especially in the pools and in the eddies and beside the rock, because, you know, even when you have fast water, you always see the food corridors and the way they move and the calmer part of the water. So, I mean, you know, reading the water is a huge issue, actually. Is what I would say is all about at the very beginning for the approach. But we do use it, the duo. You were mentioning, I guess, the duo. So, you know, here we call it the dropper, like New Zealand dropper, or however you want to call it. So this is great on the mountain because it's a double chance, isn't it? Let's say that, you know, we don't fish a lot. I mean, we do, but not a lot strike indicator up in the mountain, because strike indicator is great to break the diagonal line in long distance, right? So just to fish under the indicator in a straight line. When you are on those mountain stream, also for what I mentioned before about, you know, hunting, fishing on top, is way better a lot of time is way faster and better, gives you way more chance to fish with duo.
Brilliant. And the marble trout sound absolutely fascinating, and I've not had the chance to tackle those. How are you approaching those? Are they rising fish, or will it be streamers for the marble trout?
So, talking about the marble trout, streamers, yes. I mean, it goes, you know, big trout, big predators, there are way more chances. Of course, they will feed on a fry or on a small fish rather than on a small upwing, for example. But that's not the rule. That's absolutely not the rule. Of course, they prefer deeper water, especially, I mean, wider water with deep pools. where, they got protection and they come out just to, I mean, I'm sure you saw some video where it happened to you in first person when you hook a small trout, you are playing it, and then all of a sudden, from beneath the rock, it comes out the most, and you're like, for half an hour, right? So that's pretty much the thing. They are in a protected area where they got their spot coming out. So the streamer, it is one of the best way to chase the trophy marble. That's undeniable. Having said that, with nymph is great, from normal nymphing up to Euro nymphing. I call it mountain nymphing because, sometimes it's a mix. But anyway, work on that triangle and being sharp. So nymph is definitely, or with a duo, is definitely a good way. But it is not rare at all to fish in the valley on the slower water and find a marble rising. I still remember a friend of mine catching on a Betis size 18 a marble that was rising in front of him. So you also have to be, you have to be on the right spot at the right time, do the right presentation. So everything has to be right. But I would say, a lucky strike to have a big marble rising in front of you. Well, you need that sometimes, don't you? A bit of help from, from the above. So streamer is what you will fish to get the trophy, brown or marble, that for sure. So my suggestion, like one day we go up, you can find it more on the valley, of course, because you got more water and deeper pools. But if you want to catch the trophy trout and that day that is a mission, yes, I will go with a 6 weight. And floating line is fine. You don't need to go necessarily on intermediate. Floating line and, those even woolly bugger, these kind of streamers. Sometimes maybe a cone head or, a bit of tungsten can help a bit to get at the right depth in the right time, let's say, because in the meantime it flows, so you have to go down. So that's what I would suggest if you go for the big marble.
Brilliant. I want to take you further up the mountain a little bit further now again, and you talked pike have been a popular species to chase on the fly once again, and it's great to see that having a really nice growth area. And I read somewhere that you have found that in these mountain lakes that you found an Italian strain of pike that you're fishing for up there. Can you tell me a little bit about that, please, and how you're catching it?
Of course. I mean, the native pike of Italy and also a part of close to the border in the north is the Esox flaviae in the south and Esox cisalpinus, just because cisalpinus is also an old word to say under the Alps, let's say. I mean, on the other side, like, cisalpini, for us, they were also the French and since the Roman time. It's a completely different family and strain. It's a bit different. Well, the liver is different because it's more a marble, actually. It's all about marble, it seems. It's all about marble. It's more tiger, while the northern pike has got, those roundish spot. It is, on average, a bit smaller. So, I mean, here in Italy, we also have northern pike. And the northern pike is not rare to catch. 1.20 meters. I'm talking about a 40-foot. So the over, right? The famous big mama and the over. The Italic pike, when it reaches 1 meter, is a big pike. Is a big mama. You can be sure about that. 1.10 meters is we start to talk about record, like Guinness record, because it's less aggressive as well. So that brings us to the fishing side. Fly fishing is a great method for them because being less aggressive, we can play a bit more in low speed, a bit more sensual, is that a word? And be a bit more imitative sometimes, but imitative in terms of movement, let's say. So that's the main difference. It's a bit less aggressive and therefore a bit smaller, let's say, than the northern pike. it hybridizes like the marble trout. Since we didn't mention it, but it's the same, so we can mention it now. There is a huge hybridization between, for example, the marble trout and the brown trout. They do mix a lot. So a lot of time you catch a marble, which is a marble, but you see some few spots like a brown trout. That's a hybrid. Or you see a brown trout, but that, has got a kind of canvas of tiger. And that's hybrid as well. So you can still find pure marble, but hybridization is a thing. So same for the pike. There are places, especially in closed environment like lakes, where you can just find Italic pike. Just those. I mean, it's impossible to find a northern pike. But in lakes, for example, here in central Italy, close to Rome, is full of volcanic lake because they were full of volcanoes. Some is still in activity underneath, where the northern pike was introduced because the meat of the pike, it's really used in traditional, dishes. Not really nowadays, still a bit nowadays, but not a lot. But back in the days, yes, I mean, it was a good meat like the perch, for example. So like commercial fishermen used to take them. So there has been an introduction of the northern pike. So on those volcanic lakes, you can find quite a lot of hybrid with, a lot of, with tiger pattern, let's say marble pattern, but a few dots. And on average, they are bigger than the pure Italic. It's great. I mean, here you can fish for pike in the mountain as well, which is, to me, one of a kind sometimes. And you can do it under the Dolomites in the north and on the high Alpine Valley, Apennine Valley here in the central southern Italy, down to Campania, which is the region of Naples. So, I mean, we're talking about quite being in the south, right? And you mix that environment. That's, of course, it's not appropriate to call it an alpine lake because we are not on the Alps. Generally, those are karst lake, so they don't have a river coming in and out properly, but they collect all the snow in those big canvas, let's say, and those are karst lake generally, with pure water and a scenario that, it's breathtaking, to be honest. And you fish for big predators, so this is strange. What can happen? I mean, the biggest harm for those karst lake is the ice, because you see they are still in summertime. They can get a lot of wind, so oxygen is an issue. So I discourage anyone to fish those waters in summertime because the fish are not oxygenated. Like in a lot of coasting, to be honest, when the wind picks up, and a pike cannot face a proper fight without damage. And that's another issue about, so summertime you might have this phenomenon, but then the biggest harm can be in winter time because you are high altitude, and here the winter in central Italy is tough. On the, I don't know, it's different because Alps and Dolomites and winter time, they go kind of together, right? Even in the imagery, like in the stereotype. In central Italy, the Apennines has always been raw and wild and tough, to be honest. So it goes very low. I'm talking about -30, -40 as well in some places, even if those crests are not that high. So the ice can get so thick that can take off a lot of oxygen and fish might not even survive. So that is a big harm to those waters, let's say. But generally they do it right, and like it happens on Northern Europe, also on the Baltic Sea, where I fish is with them. I love it. We do groups as well over there. After it gets, the frost, all the fish has to feed to take it back, to gain all the power. And this happens after the spawning season, generally, and before the spawning season. And this is nice because, big mamas are, they have to feed, get strong. So when you catch, maybe the catch rate is lower. And this is like the sea bass here, close to the spawning time in winter time. The catch rate is definitely lower. But when you catch one, it's one you remember generally. It's one you remember. Is one you remember. So generally, yeah, we fish it that, but it's a bit of the exception. We have 2 or 3 places where you can fish up high in the mountain for pike, for the Italic pike, and then all those volcanic lake down, or kind of reservoir, let's say, you see where there is the dam, and we fish it from the boat. Those are bigger water where I suggest, lure fishing. In the right season, with fly fishing, you have a lot of fun, because they are in shallower water, they are feeding, so with fly fishing is great. But a lot of time when you're fishing for the over in normal season, you might want to try also lure fishing because I feel it's more appropriate, to be honest.
Brilliant. The other thing I was looking at as well was asp, and that's another interesting species to me. Would I be right in thinking that's about as close to a freshwater tarpon as you can get? Would that be a fair description?
It is the perfect description. The example I use is the baby tarpon, because it gets big like a baby tarpon, not like, the massive record tarpon. And it's a big predator. I mean, it's a great predator. It's exactly like a baby tarpon. There is a better example to be made. Also in the way they feed. So a lot of time in the right season, you can see the feeding frenzy. And when it happens, it's like you're fishing top water. They are a bit picky. On the frenzy, they are not. But the asp, you can think about it like an avid predator, but it's picky with the fly and with the lure as well. So in the right time, they feed on small whitefish or small chops, for example. And this is, springtime and autumn time, generally. Then according to the lake, that's a river fish and the lake fish here in central Italy. We don't have those massive big river like in northern Italy, like, the Po with those big also whales, catfish and stuff like that. We have it in the Tiber, but the Tiber is not like those huge river in the north. So the asp is way more on our lakes, volcanic lakes and reservoir, especially on the reservoir here. And it's great because it's a great game fish. It's the perfect game fish because when you hook it and on the fly, you start the rodeo, exactly like a baby tarpon, jumping all over the place. You need a proper hook set, actually. It's a great fish. I mean, it is fun. And it grows big. It's like, we call it a chub on steroids. It's like a chub on steroids, right? It's generally it prefers, compared to the pike, prefers way smaller flies. Way smaller flies. Having said that, once I caught with a huge lure, those big rubber lure for pike, I'm talking about 10 inches, this kind of. I caught once with that. No one could believe it. So anything can happen in fishing, right? That's the great thing about fishing. But when you tackle the asp, you fish with Clauser minnow, for example. Just to give you a perfect example, the Clauser minnow is the example of an asp fly. Not a huge one. I'm talking about size 6, 4 maybe, but will do the job. So in this season, when they are close to the spawning time, they come up to feed spring and after, so autumn time, and you can catch them quite on the surface, let's say, with those small lure or small streamer. Lure fishermen use cranks, those small, they resemble also trout cranks, and it's an amazing fish. Of course, it's not native from Italy. God knows how they came. Well, we got some clues, right? But I mean, one really knows how they get in there. I think it's from the earliest point. It's quite a modern fish in Italy. Would be, I think, the 70s, 60s. something like that. So it's not like the brook trout, which are centuries and centuries here, but it's a very nice sport fish. So on those big lake, if you have to go with the fly, the asp is probably something I would suggest you, and it's huge fun. And then it's a chance if you come from the UK, for example. I guess to my knowledge, there are no asp over there. To my knowledge,
Not that
I don't know.
No, I don't think there are. So that's why it's really interesting for me, and the being close to a tarpon. I think tarpon is a saltwater fish. Would probably, and I've been lucky to catch them and many other species, but I think the tarpon would be the one that I would really get something for, because they're so difficult to land, and the asp being nearer as well and similar. And I think, putting in perspective, I guess, baby tarpon, we're talking, I guess, 10, 20 pounds, are we, for asp as well? Is that a similar split? With that? Yeah.
You can reach, I mean, between 10 and 20, absolutely, yes. I'm talking about, arms long, so yes. But that's why I say baby tarpon, because, yeah, it's big. Last time was springtime, just after the lockdown, so where we could go out a bit and start to fish again. I had a chase, I was fly fishing on a new kind of gummy minnow. We were experimenting a new kind of, blend with these rubbers. Fly fishing with the gummy minnow, and a huge asp was following my fly, but it was very warm because, here in central Italy, when it's June, it's already summertime, right? Very warm. So sight fishing, because that's what I didn't mention, the asp, like the tarpon, you do it sight fishing a lot of time. So you see the reaction. So this big asp just turned around, came to my fly, just touched it, and went back. And I was like, I don't deserve that, After all I've been through, I don't deserve that. Just buy it, and, I don't deserve that. So, yeah, that's a proper game fish, as you are saying.
Yeah, they sound fascinating. Yeah, I've watched them.
Exactly like with the tarpon is, or with the boat. We have several bass boat style with a casting deck. So, you are very comfortable in casting, and it's the best way because you can explore the area a bit more. That's the best way because, on those big lakes from the bank, you are very much limited to the spots, right? Also to the distance sometimes. Even if those are fish that they tend to stay close to the bank.
Yeah,
they are not deep down. Yeah, it's the game fish. The game fish.
Yeah. So you're a very, very busy fishing guide. If you've got a day off and want to go fishing, I reckon I know the answer to this, but I could be wrong. Where is it you're going to head when you go fishing for yourself for the day, when you get a day to yourself?
If you got the answer, please tell me, because I don't have it. To be honest, because it really goes, since I love it all, I really go according to the season, to be honest. And sometimes I got something that I miss so much. For example, up high in the mountain, that would be like the first answer, in the middle of nowhere with a backpack and bye-bye. Was that the answer you had in mind?
Of course.
Yeah, so probably it is. So you were right. But after that, I start. It's like from the mountain you start to see the sea, and say, I need to go there. I'm missing it. So I love to do sea bass. I love the sea bass. I love the sea bass. Then after a while, I call my mates here with the boat, and I say, when are we go pike fishing? Because we need to go pike fishing. So I wouldn't do without any of those, and I don't see why I should. So here in central Italy, when I am down in central Italy, the fish I fish more is I'm spoiled. So that's the problem. That is the problem. So when I'm in central Italy, I go predator fishing in general. So pike, sea bass. Sometimes I do trout here because it's nice, it's great. And, in 1.5 hours from Rome or from Florence, you got wonderful fly fishing spot for trout. But it's like I got a slot for the Alps and Dolomites. So when I'm over there, I just do trout in the mountain. That's what I do. I don't see any predator. I'm not interested, let's say, over there. That is my trout temple. And here, I would say, is my predator. Here is like, no rules. Any kind of predator, from the West catfish to the chub sometimes, to any kind of method is, MMA, mixed martial arts. We do it all here. It's a Royal Rumble.
I'm pleased you said the mountain one. I think I was projecting my wishes and hopes onto you, and I suspected that might have been the case. I think if I was doing what you were doing, that's probably where I would seek solitude and head high and see what I could find up there. Tell me, you've given me so much information and so much to whet my appetite. Do you have a dream Hall of Fame piece of tackle that you like to fish with?
Oh, I'm not sure I got it right. So one Hall of Fame piece of tackle, what do you mean exactly?
Do you have a favorite rod that you love going fishing with, that's been with you a long time or hasn't been with you a long time, and you thought, this is the one? This is the one. If you, heaven forbid, it had a fire and you had to take one rod out of your collection, which would that be?
Right. Nice question. Very tricky because, since I do it all, it's very difficult to choose. But first of all, I'm not a tackle junkie. Is that a word? Like, I love my personal tackle because, you did a lot with that. It's like your personal piece of equipment. But I'm not avid about that, if you know what I mean. Of course, I got a rod, which is my lightest predator rod, which is the Helios 2 covered. It's a completely black rod. It was a special edition of the Helios 2 by Orvis, completely black and stealth. You could barely see, just shining the brand, because I like to keep a low profile, so maybe, that stealth black, keep it low. It's a rod I simply love, and I did a lot with it. And so Orvis, of course, for me goes behind the tackle because I work for this brand and I still am an endorsed now an outfitter, because I also work with other guys as an agency, let's say in UK with Italy on the Fly. So I know all the people over there, and besides, sometimes it's like being in the family, really. Sometimes you fight a bit, sometimes you get along, but of course, Orvis is a part of me. So the problem is when I want to get another sponsor, that will be a tough day. that will be a tough day because, we have been together for so much time. So the 9-foot 8 weight is, and then I think in general, now the new Helios 3, I saw it developing, designing, and coming out, which is a great rod. Guys, you need to send me one. Don't forget. Sorry. And weight is a great all-rounder, right? Because you can do a lot of it. So if I had to choose, it would be my 9-foot 8 weight. Even if, for example, I got a small piece just for me. Very few clients used it, which is the super fine carbon. It's the 8-3 weight. And I love it. When I do that dry fly, that dry or die mood, I love it. Then talking about Tenkara, for me, it has never been about, the brand. So whatever I use is fine as long as it's a proper design. Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah. Nicely answered. And I hope the right people are listening and send you something as well. Anyway, so we've talked for well over an hour now, and there's so much, and I know we've probably only just scraped the surface as well, but Like we said at the beginning, and we just talked about, you are a fishing guide, and if people want to book something, they deal direct with you. I guess you do single bookings, group bookings, arrange the whole holiday, I guess, a fishing holiday. Would I be right in thinking that?
Absolutely, yes. So with Italy on the Fly, let's say that my business is in, destination fishing, actually with an Italian focus. Not only, actually, the one that was my store manager still works with, we still work a bit together. I suggested a tagline for Italy on the Fly, which is tight line and loose bells. Because, we arrange everything from, and it's, food is a big part of the experience here in Italy. So as an agency, call it as you want, actually. So from the transfer from the airport to the hotel and the restaurant, and I work with other guides as well. So not necessarily me. There are great guides, local, they know every single inch of the river they fish or the water they fish. So with Italy on the Fly, we do all of that. I am part of it, and sometimes I guide and I am a host or a group leader, or I'm just, making noise and a fuss into the group, which I love. And then there is Vito, which is anyway a guide and operates in all these destinations. So if you want, there is the website, which is www.italyonthefly.com, where it's going to be upgraded very soon, but there are all the location and fishing destination in the website. Please, if you want to get in touch, for everyone wants to get in touch directly with me, I am on Instagram, which is Italy on the Fly, and it's Vito, so it's my personal one. And then also on Facebook, Vito Rubino, Rubino. It's my Facebook, so I love to be in touch, and and I need to develop the social. So please, I need followers for Instagram, because I'm not that kind of new school influencer like TikTok dance, and I'm learning. I will learn.
Excellent. I know there's been some fascinating things listening to you, and as a former fishing guide myself, I can see when you talked about spending so much time with the Tenkara rod, making sure you get it right. That to me speaks volumes as a fishing guide, that you make sure you know exactly what you're doing, your subject rather than winging it. And that to me, I picked on very, very quickly, which is fantastic and music to my ears to hear. I think it'd be fabulous company as well, where you said about the coffee to start the day and the food aspect of it as well. I mean, I know we talked about, I'm going to come out because I'm going to book a trip out with you, because it just sounds the mixture of fishing, but now the asp as well, to me, sounds phenomenal. So when we finish this, we're going to talk some more, I think.
We didn't mention, the bass and the mullet on the fly. So we need another hour and a half. Oh, God. Too much.
So many fish, so little time.
Oh, yes.
Vito, it's been absolutely fantastic chatting with you. I wish you every continued success with what you're doing out there, and your passion and love for the fishing there. It comes across so strongly in this. And as I said, I'm super excited to be hopefully booking something with you when we're able to do this as well. It looks and sounds absolutely fabulous. So you've got me hook, line and sinker. Thank you for taking the time to talk to me. I've really, really enjoyed catching up with you.
Well, thanks a lot for this lovely chat, because, a chat between fellow anglers is always great. Thank you for having me. Congratulations for all you are doing with Fly Culture, this podcast and the magazine itself. And, thanks to everyone that will listen. Just get in touch and, let's be a squad. Let's be together, especially now. Let's be together. Next season will be a blast. for sure. Thank you.
Vito, thank you so much for being a guest on the Fly Culture podcast.
Thank you.
Everyone, this has been another edition of the Fly Culture podcast. I hope you've enjoyed this one as much as me. As ever, there are many, many down the line. We also put this on YouTube. You may or may not have seen that. So perhaps if you've enjoyed that, you'll consider subscribing to that too and continue enjoying that. So thank you, everyone. This is Pete Tigers signing off, and hope you've enjoyed the Fly Culture podcast.
The Fly Culture podcast is brought to you in association with Fly Culture, a quarterly print magazine. For more information, please visit flyculturemag.com. You can also find Fly Culture on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter.